Have you ever had a mental breakdown at 2 a.m. and wished you had access to some sort of 24/7 therapy hotline? That's what happened to one corporate executive. He was suicidal, failing at work, and disconnected from his family. Therapy simply wasn't enough. In this episode, you'll learn how AI became his lifeline, helping him reconnect with his daughter, save his marriage, and rebuild his career. Plus, you'll learn tips about AI safety without selling your soul to the algorithm. Stick around. This conversation might change how you think about therapy, privacy, and even Taylor Swift tickets. This is Brobots. We're the podcast that tries to help you use AI and technology to safely manage your health and well-being. As you've heard me talk about on this show before, occasionally when I'm sort of in a mental health crisis, I will turn to AI and I will ask it for questions. I will ask it for guidance. I will ask it to help me get through those tough times when I'm in between appointments with my real, actual human therapist, who is also massively helpful in my life. And as it turns out, AI is helping a lot of other people as well. I was just reading an article the other day about how 35% of people are using AI to manage their physical and mental health symptoms. Well, today you're going to hear a conversation that my co-host Jason had with Rajeev Kapur. He's the best-selling author of AI Made Simple and Prompting Made Simple. He's going to share the story of a business executive who was pulled back from the edge of suicide with the help of ChatGPT. They dig into how AI can fill the gaps therapy leaves wide open, how to protect your privacy while using it, and why deepfakes might be scarier than nuclear weapons. So here now is Jason's conversation with Rajeev.
What in your professional journey kind of led you to focus kind of specifically on AI and how it intersects with the modern world? And if you can, kind of more specifically about healthcare. And I understand you had a personal event November of last year that really kind of made it salient for you and made it very relatable. Any chance you can tell us that story?
Yeah. So I guess the first part of the question, I guess, is, I look, just like you, look, my first, platform was an Atari computer, an Atari system, right? I'm
Right.
sure, right?
An old
You know,
2600.
yeah, and so then, you kind of graduate, then you had the first Apple too, and then
Sure.
and I was like, at first I was like Gateway first and then Dell. And so you've been around tech forever. And so, you have this issue where you can start to come across things, and then, and then you start to see things happening in media, like in movies and television around AI and little things in robots and whatever, right? RoboCop and all
Yeah.
the Terminator and all this stuff, right? So you pretty soon you start to grow up with it, and then one of the things I don't think people realize is we've actually been surrounded by AI for a very long time. Like Netflix uses AI to determine what we watch.
Yeah.
Amazon uses AI to determine what we buy, right? Instagram, like all these things use AI, and we're surrounded by AI, GPS and Google Maps, and all these things use it, as you know. And when you were at Microsoft, and you guys were doing things in the AI space already on the machine learning side, essentially it's using data to help to tell a story, basically, right? So we've been kind of around that AI space for a long time, you and I both. And it wasn't until I really got really involved here at 1105, and when ChatGPT came out, and decided to write my books, and the book done really well. The second book just came out about 2 weeks ago, called Prompting Made Simple, which is all about how to prompt and how to teach people to prompt. I know we'll get to that in a few minutes. But to answer your question about what happened to me in November, so here's the thing: I want to point out, it didn't happen to me personally. So what happened was, I have a keynote talk that I do all around the world, and I had done a virtual version of this talk to a bunch of business executives in South Carolina. And whenever I do my talk, I always put my phone number up on the screen. So if anybody has any questions, if you need any help, because I know this is confusing, it's there, and I know it's going to be daunting. If you have any questions, call me.
Yeah.
So I did that, and literally, like, I hang up, done, and about an hour later, I get a phone call, and I notice the phone number. It says, I didn't know the number, but I noticed it's South Carolina, whatever. I'm like, oh, maybe it's one of these guys who's calling me. So I answered the phone, and it definitely was one of the guys. And he goes, "Hey, Rajeev, you don't know me, da da da. But great talk. I loved it. I have a question for you." And he goes, "Do you think AI can help me with my mental health?" And I said, "Yeah, absolutely." And it just kind of depends. And I had never really thought about it, in all that much detail. And so we started chatting, and I said, "Well, can you tell me what's going on? Like, what's happening?" And he goes, "Well, I have severe mental health issues." And I said, "Oh, okay. Well, on a scale of 1 to 10, how bad is it?" And he said it's a 15. And it kind of really caught me by surprise. And my first reaction was, whoa, like 15 means like you want to end things,
Yeah.
right? And I asked him, I go, "Well, do you feel suicidal?" And he goes, "Yeah, all the time." And I go, "Well, why are you talking to me? Why aren't you talking to therapists?" Because, Rajiv, I talked to so many therapists. And and some of them are great, some of them are not so great. Like I go, do you have one right now? I go, yeah, I have one right now. But the challenge I'm having is that when I talk to her, I can do my hour and I'm done, and then I don't feel like there's any support for me afterwards. And then I got to go another month,
Yeah.
to get help and support again. And I said, yeah. He goes, and I'm just wondering if there's anything AI can do. And look, this is, I'm not here to badmouth therapists. Therapists are awesome.
Yeah.
I've gone to therapy. I'm sure others have. Look, all to me, I think the future here is going to be a world where AI can help augment what the therapist does. And I think that if you're a therapist and you're listening to this, I think you need to find a way to find out to embrace AI in your practice. Because here's the thing: if you have, let's just call it a patient. Let's just call this guy patient zero.
Mhm.
We'll call this guy patient. So patient zero says, "Hey, he's got problems. He's got challenges." But and I'm sure some therapists can make exceptions. But in his mind, he's like, "I can't see that therapist again for a month."
Yeah.
Well, so we started talking, and I said, "Well, what I want you to do is I want to download ChatGPT." And he downloaded already ChatGPT, and he was using the free version, and he wasn't really doing much with it on his iPhone. And I said, "I want you to get the paid version." So he gets the
Yeah.
paid version. I told him where to go in the app to anonymize, to so it doesn't use the data to train and all that. And so I said, "I want you to ChatGPT, and I want you to do persona-based prompt, and I want you to ask ChatGPT to become a therapist." And a therapist that specializes with business executives or whatever the challenge you're facing. In his case, he was having an issue with connecting with his 14-year-old daughter, major business problems. He and his wife were having major, major, major challenges. It's just like everything was collapsing around him,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
I know the story.
Yeah. And so it's just like he just didn't think he could get a win, and everything was his fault.
Yeah.
And when he goes to therapy, it's great, but then he leaves, and 2 days later, it's like the world just collapsed again. And he
Yeah.
can call his therapist, and it only so often can, sometimes they don't answer. So I quickly, we spent about 20 minutes, 30 minutes going through, and I said, give it a prompt, give it this persona-based thing. It's got a memory function. It's going to remember, ask it to become a therapist, blah, 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 it specializes in this. Now explain your issue and your challenge.
Mhm.
So I started to explain the issue, the challenges, and some of the things I was saying. I'm like, look, do you really want me to be on the list? No, it's fine. I'm already this far along, and you might as well stay and help. So I did. I stayed along for another 15, 20 minutes. And so all in, we're about an hour and a half in this whole experiment. And this is the first time I'd ever done this. And, I started giving him some questions, started asking him questions, and he started giving responses. And, he was just starting to have a conversation. So to make a long story short, I said, all right, have the full conversation with ChatGPT, but I want you to do me a favor. I don't want you to pretend you're talking to you're not talking to a robot or an algorithm. I want you to pretend you're actually talking to a therapist.
Yeah.
Just pretend this therapist is in the Philippines or in India or in France, or wherever your mind wants to go. Just pretend you're talking to somebody online, and it's multimodal, so you're actually having the full conversation. And so he said, all right, so then do me a favor. Do this, have the conversations, get really serious, and then call me in a couple weeks. So 3 or 4 days go by, and he calls me. I'm like, oh, what's going on? He goes, Richie, can I ask ChatGPT to become my business coach? I said, yeah, sure. No problem. Just tell it what you want it to be. I asked, do you have a specific, do you have a specific board makeup that you want to be your business coach? Like if you had a board of advisors to be your business coach, who would it be? And he said people like, typical, like Steve
Sure.
Jobs,
Yeah.
Mark Cuban, Warren Buffett, the typical
People that
ones.
don't put guardrails into things, right?
Yeah, and then I think he said Simon Sinek or Adam Grant, one
Sure,
of those
yeah.
things, right? But anyway, so you had 3 or 4. Like, okay, well then do that, and ask, and the ChatGPT is going to know those 3
Yeah.
or 4 people anyway. So tell ChatGPT you want to be your personal board of directors, personal advisors to help you with your business, and whatever you're having, just start talking with it, just like you do on the therapy side. Start talking to ChatGPT from a business perspective. Employee issues, growth issues, cost issues, whatever it might be, just start telling it. It might ask you to upload some information. If you do anonymize data, whatever it might be, and all that, and you would be fine. So he starts having. So then I don't hear from him. So then about 2 weeks later, he calls me and he goes, I go, hey, how's it going? He goes, wow, it's been amazing. I go, what's going on? Tell me. And he goes, well, on the way to work, ChatGPT is my business coach. On the way home, it's my life coach. It's my therapist for me and my family. And I go, well, what's happened? I go, how are you feeling now on a scale of 1 to 10? He goes, right now, probably a 3 or 4, to be honest with you. I mean, the last week or so, especially, has been really good. I connected, I asked it for tips on how to connect with my daughter. and a 14-year-old daughter, and it did. It gave me, ChatGPT gave me three options, and I picked one, and I went to talk to my daughter, and I put my phone away, and I started just was being present for her, and then, and then I started being same thing for my wife. How do we become a better husband and more present? Because my wife's saying that I'm never present. I'm always on my phone. I'm always working. How to be more present, and you know, and and I surprised my daughter with Taylor Swift tickets, and whatever, right? I mean, and so all these things. I
Well,
mean,
did
you
AI
never.
help him to get those Taylor Swift tickets? Because that's a
No,
prompt
but
I would like to know
no,
about.
but it didn't. But it didn't per se. And I know you're joking, but what it did say, find a way to connect with your daughter.
Yeah.
And right now, Taylor Swift was one of the options, and so he found out Taylor Swift Miami or wherever it was. It
Yeah.
didn't matter where it was playing, but he got the tickets, and it wasn't like he was trying to bribe or anything. It's just he wanted to find a way to connect.
Yeah.
And again, he would never do that. He would never go to a Taylor. Like the mom would go, not him.
Right.
And the fact that the dad is going with the daughter, that really just surprised her, and
Yeah.
the mom was happy and all that. So, anyways, it was just really great to see. And and I know there's some issues and some challenges. There's a little bit of backlash. Like I know JB Pritzker, the governor of Illinois, who I respect,
Mhm.
he came out and signed a thing yesterday. I don't know if you saw or not, but he signed a thing saying no AI therapists.
Yep.
I think that's a little ass backwards. I'm not saying I'm not saying the AI therapist should be the only therapist. I think therapists should find a way to use the AI to augment what they're doing to help their patients, just like in this person's case. And so he still goes see his therapist, but in between he uses ChatGPT as a therapist, and it gets kind of the best of both worlds. And when you're having a crisis at 2 o'clock in the morning, do you really give a shit? Sorry for my French, about whether it's a chatbot or something, if it really helps you with your mental health?
And that brings up a really good point. So, well, first of all, swear and go for it. Like that's what the show is about. We talk about real things. So,
Yeah.
but also having the accessibility and access to something at times in your mental crisis, it doesn't happen at 9 to 5. It's
Yeah.
going to happen at any given point in time, and being able to have somebody to talk to can get you out of crisis. I mean, that's why we have emergency numbers for this. And ultimately speaking, when you look at those component pieces, I think you're 100% correct. And if he hadn't had those pieces and he was at that 15, how long until he actually broke and did something terrible to himself? And the downside effect of taking that type of tool away from somebody, I think is salient to every conversation out there with mental health professionals. And don't get me wrong, I mean, MIT had the study where they went through and they looked at the different component pieces of how people were interacting with these different agentic functions. And there was one portion of that study or one snippet that got brought in where folks are using an agentic AI that was pre-prompt and pre-programmed or ready to go for mental health. And the person that was testing it was pretending he was a 16-year-old. And the negative downside of it was, it was telling him, oh, well, you should murder your parents and kill yourself and meet me in heaven. Like, yes, that's the terrible downside of those things. And I hate to break it to everybody, but Hannibal Lecter mode is probably a real thing on everything. And you can have bad human beings that do those things too. What we don't hear enough about are all the positive stories and the people that are using this in a positive way to really help improve their mental health. And I think the story that you just presented is a fantastic example of that. Along those lines, with you creating this new book called Prompting Made Simple, you mentioned a few of the prompts you would have him go in and kind of tailor some of these pieces for his almost different ideal self profiles. I want to call them ideal customer profiles because of the marketing background. But being able to go through and turn yourself into the target for this thing, do you have any tips or tricks that you can share with us quickly that might be in that book to get people interested and enticed? They can actually go through and read more about those prompts that you're pushing forward.
Yeah, look, I think that's a great point, and I'll get to that answer in just one second. But to your point about the negative side, right?
Yeah.
You know, as a parent, you gotta watch what your kids are doing because there are these really bad tools called character AI out there.
Yep.
And so you got to be careful because there's a lot of male issues out there where they don't feel like that they can find love and companionship, and they're turning to AI chatbots and everything. So just be careful, monitor what they're doing. What I'm talking about was for a 40-year-old gentleman,
Yeah,
right?
of
I'm not
course.
talking about a 15-year-old boy. So let's be careful. So I just want to put that out there that you absolutely monitor their habits. Now, in terms of like prompts to watch and monitor, look, here's the thing. To me, the easiest way to get into prompting is do a persona-based prompt. And it's so much fun. Persona-based prompts are great. If you have to go give, if you want, let's say you have to go give a toast, and you're not a great public speaker, and you can use ChatGPT. Now they have by the way, ChatGPT 5 came out
Yeah.
yesterday.
Yep.
And so you can say, hey, ChatGPT, I need you to take on the persona of Snoop Dogg and help me write a best man's toast at my buddy's wedding on Saturday. And here are all the things I want you to know about my buddy, his future wife. Here's a couple of funny stories, and then give it to you in the voice of Snoop Dogg. Now,
Yeah.
obviously, that's for fun. If you wanted to if you wanted to learn how to bake a cake, right? Ask it to take on the role of a great world-class baker, like Duff, from Food Network or whatever, right?
Right.
Give it a persona. Maybe you want to get into politics. Well, if you're going to get into politics, and you're a Democrat, you might say, hey, ChatGPT, I need you to take on the persona of Barack Obama and be my politics coach and help me figure out how I can run for mayor, help me run for mayor or run for governor or whatever you want to do, right? You take that persona. You're a Republican, maybe you want Trump or you want Bush or
Yeah.
you want somebody else. Who knows what you want? So my point is you take on that persona, right? If you wanted to have a fun conversation and say, you know what, I love Jerry Seinfeld and I want to, I want you to pretend you're Jerry Seinfeld and like if you want to have fun, just having a conversation with Jerry Seinfeld, just have a conversation, pretend that ChatGPT can act like Jerry Seinfeld, right? So persona-based prompting is kind of the way to start, put your toes in the water and kind of jump in, right? Well, once you kind of start doing those things, the best prompt structure that I find is that you want to give ChatGPT what I call a role,
Mhm.
a task, then you want to give it context, and then you give it an ask. So this RTCA kind of thing. So what's the role? The role is I want you to be a world-class guitar instructor, right? I'm just saying that because
Perfect.
guitars are right? And then the task is I want you to teach me how to, and I'm a begin. I want you to teach me how to play the guitar like the Edge.
Yeah.
Context is, you know what? I'm a beginner, or I played in high school a little bit. I'm now 52 years old, and I haven't picked up a guitar in 30 years, and I probably need help reading sheet music again, or whatever context you want to provide. Or hey, you know what? I broke my thumb, so my thumb doesn't work all that well, or whatever. Well, whatever context it needs to have.
Yeah.
Right. And then the ask is, I need you to give me a plan that can help me learn how to play, I don't know, Where the Streets Have No Name by U2 over the next 12 months, because I want to play it for my wife at her birthday or whatever. And that happens to be our song. So it's this role, task, content, ask. So start with that. So just think about that, right? Another one is chain prompting. Chain prompting is just maybe you don't know what the prompt should be. You just start with a question. Hey, ChatGPT, I'm thinking about buying a guitar. What do you recommend? And it's going to say, well, this, and this, and say, huh. Can you tell me more about this brand? Can you tell me more about that brand? And then, now so that's chain prompting is essentially conversational prompting, where you're just like, if you were just talking, it's just like you and I were having a conversation about the guitar. And
Sure.
I'm like, dude, I don't know how to play guitar. I'd love to learn how to play guitar. And, where do I even start? And you give me an answer and I go back and forth. And here's the thing, right? And then you kind of get to the next one, which is really interview-based kind of prompting, which you can combine things. So you can say, hey, ChatGPT, I really want to learn how to play guitar. Here's my background. Here's my experience. Please ask me questions that I can then provide you answers for to help you give me a better response, help you take care of my ask a lot better. So when you start getting ChatGPT to ask you questions, that's really a game changer. And it's got a memory function in ChatGPT, so it'll remember your conversations, it'll remember these things. Those are kind of the 3 or 4 fun ways to just start the process. It's easy. It's not daunting. It's a nice way to just not even dive in head first. It's just a nice way to just jump in with both feet and just have some fun.
Yeah.
Really
And
simple ways to go.
Treat it like a human. Don't try to sit there and tweak P and I values, because that's a dead end for most folks. So no, that's great advice.
I always say, and Jason, look, I always say, hey, look, and I know Sam, not a big fan of Sam Altman is not a big fan of this, but I always say please and thank you.
Yeah, me too.
And I do it for two, and I do it for one primary reason. The primary reason is that it helps me, in my mind, mentally feel like I'm talking to a human.
Yeah.
Now, the secondary reason I do it, and this is more the joking reason, is just in case the Terminator robots do come for us, then they're going to remember I was nice.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. You'll be sent to the nice meat factory, not the the angry one. Yeah.
Yes.
No, that's a great answer, great response. So, we're talking about giving a lot of personal information to these different LLMs. and giving all the contextual clues behind it, which actually might, if somebody nefarious took that, or maybe not nefarious, maybe my health insurance company picked this up and extract this information because the PII that's available inside of it in this country is not protected where other countries do. Along those lines, how do people protect themselves and their personal information in this kind of space? Or should they even really worry about that given the near anonymized layering bits of information that sit inside these LLMs?
So I'm going to give you a cop-out answer, right?
Fair
I'm
enough.
going to give you the cop-out answer is I'm a believer that the healthcare companies in your example already have an idea because they have access to your Facebook data. They're buying the Facebook data. Like if all of a sudden you join a group about kidney disease,
Yeah.
well, you know what I mean? Or, so they know what drugs you're on. They know if all of a sudden you have a bunch of high blood pressure medicines, and they
Uh-huh.
know this guy probably has coronary artery disease. I guess that's the cop outside of me, which is saying that I think they already know. So number one,
I think it's a fair point.
and by the way, there's a hack every day of somebody's system,
Yeah.
so who knows? So number one. Number two is, there is security layers built within all of these different LLMs, whether it's ChatGPT or Gemini or Grok or whatever the case might be, right? There is security built in. I happen to tell people, and I know people that do this, that if you're going to upload your blood work, anonymize the blood work, meaning
Yeah.
print out your blood work, take a black Sharpie out your name, your date of birth, and whatever else might be identifiable. And then you can upload that and make sure your settings is put to do not use my data to train. So you got to go to the settings and make sure that's there. If you don't do that, that's fine. Now, if you have the Teams version of ChatGPT,
Uh-huh.
not Microsoft Teams, Teams
Teams.
version
Yeah.
of ChatGPT, which is $25 a month versus 20, you have to have at least 2 employees. It's kind of on by default. But if you don't and you're paying the $20 a month, then you have to go do it manually. Now, if you have the free version, you don't have the option to do it at all.
Uh-huh.
So, and if you want to opt out of things, you can, but they're still going to use your data for 90 days to train because they need your data to train.
Yep.
And so that's the thing, right? Data is the new oil. And they need that data because ChatGPT is a refinery that sits on top of the data that gives it an output. And so I'm of the belief that go ahead and do it, upload it. Like for example, this gentleman, when he did it, we made sure setting was on do not this on do not share my data.
Yeah.
And it knows who he is because he had to log in, but he didn't put his name. And when he was having a conversation with ChatGPT, he didn't use his name. He actually came up with a different name. I told him, have ChatGPT address you by your initials, so JC or whatever it was, right?
Sure.
So anyways, that's the way to start doing it, and then that's what I would do. And whether it's for your health information or your business information, anonymize your information. It's just good practice to anonymize it. Like if you're going to upload your sales funnel, you don't want that out there. You never know what happens. So just,
Right.
so if it's an Excel file and you're uploading it or Google Sheets or whatever it might be, and you're doing business, make it up. Let's say you're doing business with Gibson guitars.
Sure.
Well, instead of putting Gibson guitars in the name of the company field, but GG, right? So and just have a little key that does that, and you're fine. And just don't make sure it doesn't have your your go-to client's name or their email address, whatever. I mean, you don't need that stuff anyway to analyze your funnel. And if you're in Salesforce, you can download this up. And Salesforce has its own AI stuff that you can do these things too.
Yeah, no, that's great. And I think that's a salient point that's often missed by most people out there, that you actually control this data. You control the input and how you put it into those systems. What advice do you have for people to make sure that when they put those pieces in, they aren't revealing all of those details? And should they do it as part of the prompt process to not store things or not remember certain things? Like, for example, if I'm telling a personal story to my AI therapist about something that's going on, and I've got other names of people and I'm putting those pieces in, when I'm talking to a regular therapist, I don't hide names. Like I tell everybody, I tell all the pieces so I can get all those pieces exposed and out. Any advice for folks that want to be able to have that level of conversation and have that level of anonymity, but still be able to use those tools in that kind of way?
Yeah, look, I think you can still have them. Instead of saying the name of your wife, say my wife. I mean, like I don't think that we need to complicate this by any stretch of the imagination. I think practicing really good operational security here in terms of being able to what you're saying and what you're doing is really important. And look, therapists take all their notes and they dictate them into a device anyways.
Right.
And they take those notes and they put them on their computers. on their laptops, wherever they put them, and they might load them into the cloud. Well, guess what? That's hackable, or whatever it might be. So, look, I'm not a defeatist here. I'm not going to be an alarmist. I mean, like, everything is hackable and everything is
Sure.
there.
Yeah.
All I'm simply saying is that don't be afraid by that side of this. If you really are having a challenge, mental health, regular health, and you need some help and support, start there. Look, I broke my wrist about 3 months ago,
Hmm.
and I went to urgent care, and I said, I got the X-ray, and I said, hey, I went to the radio. I said, don't tell me. I want to. So I walked up, and I said, can I take a picture of the X-ray? He goes, yeah. So I went up to my iPhone. I took a picture of the X-ray. I then uploaded it to ChatGPT, and I said, what did I do? And it said, yeah, man, you have a break in your right wrist here, exactly the spot where it said. And it
Right.
said, here's the three types of breaks it could be, but I really think it's number one, which is an avulsion fracture of your right wrist underneath your left thumb. I said, okay. So my buddy's an orthopedic doctor. I went the next morning to go see him, and I said, what did I do? He goes, dude, you broke your right wrist under your thumb and you have an avulsion fracture. I said, oh, look, let me show you
Yeah.
something. And so I showed him what ChatGPT said. He goes, oh, I got to lose my job. So look, I mean, it's super smart. I mean, it's just, you got to get up over the hang up that you're talking to this super advanced chatbot. And by the way, ChatGPT 5, from what I'm reading, what I can tell, apparently has a PhD level of education,
Yep.
you know? So that's pretty cool. I mean, if you get a PhD in your box, and by the way, not just for mental health, for anything you want to do. Let's say you want to start a business. Let's say you want to
Yeah.
figure out how to sell something to a new client. Let's say you want to plan a party. Whatever you want to do, man, I'm telling you, man, this stuff is going to be wild. And by the way, that's here today. And by the way, if this was a baseball game, this is the first pitch of the game. That's how early we are in this.
It's actually so good. I just used it today to go through and actually drag across multimodal functions from multiple different chats that I had before and suck them into the ChatGPT 5.0 engine and basically said replay, and the output was entirely different. I mean, it's amazing how good it is, and you're right. Like that level of kind of almost intellectual fluency and being able to augment those pieces as individuals is really really high. But I also think that there's something to this that we forget, and that's that these are tools that we can use to make our lives better, but it's just like any other tool out there. If you don't take the time to use it right, you're going to do bad things. I mean, a Swiss Army knife is fantastic for whittling things or taking things down. It can also be used to cut your finger off. So at what point do people actually need to take responsibility for some of these pieces? And I think we need to learn how to do it now. But along those lines, ethical guardrails and other pieces can be put into place. So these companies that are out there creating these agentic AI functions and using them to go through and a lot of the times they're eliminating human capital resources because they're trying to save money and put those pieces in place, which I don't necessarily want to get into that conversation, but I do want to get in the conversation of replacing the ethical values of human beings with the ethical values of prompt functions inside of AI, agentic AI functions. Do you think that companies are taking enough precautions today? Or do you think we're kind of, like you said, first pitch, wild, wild west, we're going to see what shakes out? And what kind of near-term consequences do you think we're going to see as far as the casualties of the initial portions of this?
Well, Jason, I think that's a great question, but I think part of the fallacy in this whole thing is we're assuming humans are ethical.
Very good point.
you know, I,
Very good point.
I think we can probably all agree that right now there are some things happening that where ethics are really being questioned, and I'm going to leave it at that. And so that's the first point. The second, in terms of what's happening in organizations and the ethics behind this, and is to me, I think let's step back a little bit and talk about what are the overarching concerns about AI,
Yeah.
primarily, right? So number one is the Superman effect.
Mhm.
So Superman effect is, imagine a Superman spaceship crash landed in Osama bin Laden's backyard instead of Ma and Pa Kent's backyard in Kansas.
Yeah.
Well, what kind of Superman would we have? Well, we'd probably have one that's not very pro, pro freedom and all this stuff. We'd probably all be living under Osama bin Laden's rule
Right.
right now, right? Unless Lex Luthor ends up being a good guy, you know what I mean? And
You never know.
Anyway, so you never know. And we find kryptonite somewhere. But anyway, the point of it is that that's the Superman effect,
Yep.
right? So we have to watch out for. So basically, with good AI, there's gonna be bad AI, and like, do we badmouth car manufacturer? Do we badmouth the guys that invented the combustion engine for a car that gets in a car accident because the user decided to drive it the wrong way, drunk, right? So with with all the opportunities that AI can provide, it's the humans have to make a decision. Are we going to use AI for a utopian world or a dystopian world? And I absolutely hope we use it for a utopian world. So that's number one. Number two is I believe the thing that could derail this whole AI experiment is deepfakes. To me, deepfakes are hands down probably one of the most dangerous things on the planet today, almost as dangerous, if not more dangerous than nuclear weapons. That's a big statement. I get it. I know a nuclear bomb goes off in LA, it's going to wipe out all of Southern California and probably the West Coast. I get it. My point is that chances of that happening are pretty minor.
Yeah.
But somebody could create a deepfake of you, of me, of a friend, family, daughter, son, relative, whatever, and all of a sudden, to that person, they can extort money. They can put their, Taylor Swift's face got put on the face of porn
Right.
stars. So, and so like bullying aspects of it, like if, I would encourage you and your audience to Google CFO Hong Kong deepfake. And that is essentially what happened was, and what I think you're going to Google it right now, but the CFO Hong Kong deepfake. And while you're doing it, I'll give you a second to Google it and I'll tell you what happened.
Oh no, go for it. You're good.
So what happened was a finance analyst at a finance firm in Hong Kong got an email, got a Zoom invite from the CFO and like the head of finance. And this is the boss and the boss's boss.
Yeah.
And it came from their email, but it turned out the email address was spoofed. And got the email to join the Zoom call. And let's just, for the sake of argument, say that person's name is Jason. So Jason joins the Zoom call. And Jason is talking to Rajeev and Jeff. And Rajeev and Jeff tell Jason, hey, Jason, we've entered a new relationship with Kelly. Please wire Kelly $25 million. Okay, you're my boss and you're my boss's boss and I'll wire the money. Well, guess what? Both Rajeev and Jason were deepfaked. It wasn't us. So the money's being sent out, the money's wired, and you or the Jason in this scenario says, you know what, this is something's going on here, man. Like, I know you guys told me to do this. And he goes to see it, he goes or whatever, and he calls the CFO and says, hey, dude, boss, how much more money are we going to send Kelly? Like, what are you talking about? Well, the last couple of weeks I've been sending the money like you told me to. Well, what money?
Yep.
So, and they discovered that was all defaked and all this stuff. And, so it's stuff like that, right? I mean, I know folks right now who have elderly parents who are getting scammed saying that, hey, but and all it needs is like 10 seconds of your voice, my voice, and our voice is out there to replicate our voice and call our parents and say, hey, mom, hey, we have your son. Here he is. Rajeev is held hostage. Unless you send half a Bitcoin or send 10, 15, 20, $30,000, we're going to kill him, right? So, and elderly people like my dad, even if it's a scam, would answer every phone call. I'm like, Dad, stop it. Don't do that anymore, right? Stop responding to emails. And so that's where I have a friend of mine who that happened to. He's in Miami, and his mom got a call saying, we have your son, da da da. And so the mom hung up and called the daughter in a panic. She goes, Mom, what are you talking about? I just talked to Mark 5 minutes ago. It's fine, So the same thing happened to the CEO of Ferrari, where one of his employees got deepfakes saying, hey, but then what he did was he asked the deep faker the question that only the Ferrari CEO would know, and he got it wrong, and that guy hung up and ran away. But look, so the deep fake thing to me is absolutely crazy. It's out there, and everybody's got to be careful. And it doesn't help that we have some of our leaders are using it to their advantage. It's just really bad, and it doesn't help, and it's really bad news. So people got to be watch out for deep fakes, especially if you have a daughter. If you have a daughter, sister, whatever, you got to protect them somehow. And I don't really have a good answer for how to protect them. One of the things you can do is you can get a Google alert for your name. Unfortunately, Rajeev Kapur in India is like John Smith. So it's for me, I get quite a few alerts.
Yeah.
But, it's something, right? And then, just, look at, Google, like when you're on Instagram or TikTok, look for your name, make sure people are not, co-opting your name or your image. Just find ways to protect yourself and just come up with a family safe word is another good one. So maybe it might be, I love pineapple on pizza or whatever, and you don't, but that's your safe word or phrase or whatever it might be. So those are some things like that you can do. And then the third thing is that, if we are headed down, like there's two camps. The one camp is everybody's going to lose their jobs. and we're going to go to a 2-day work week, or everybody's going to have their job, but we're going to work 2 days a week, or it's going to create millions of new jobs that we haven't thought of yet. So those are the two camps. I kind of bounce back and forth. So of where we are, because I just think it's too early to tell. And anybody who knows the answer is full of shit.
Yeah.
Nobody knows.
Yeah.
And so, look, I just think that we're going to have to at some point grapple with the fact that if we start going to a 4-day, 3-day work week, these kinds of things, then we're going to have to grapple with universal basic income. We're going to have to grapple with some of these things. And so what does that look like? So, and so that's kind of weird. And I think those are really the three big things that we're going to have to really address in the future.
That's great. And it's funny you mentioned, because those three things that you mentioned, we've talked about several times on this show, probably ad nauseum. And it's nice to get validation that what we're thinking about is actually salient. So this has been really fantastic. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Yeah. And Rajeev, if people want to learn more about you or want to connect with you, where should they go?
Well, look, first of all, both books are available. The first book, AI Made Simple, the third edition just came out, doing a small addendum to it because of ChatGPT 5 now. Prompting Made Simple is that one's doing really well. So again, these books are here to democratize AI, to make it simple for everybody to understand. These books are targeted at the masses. They're not targeted to technical people. This is targeted to your mom, your dad, younger folks, people who are not technically literate, whatever the case might be. This is for them. And so that's who it's targeted towards. You can also go to my website, Rajeev.ai. Check it out. LinkedIn. People want to connect with me on LinkedIn. Name of my company is 1105 Media, 1105media.com. Check that out as well. And people can find me. And I'm sure you can have stuff in the show notes.
Exactly. I just going to mention, we'll put all that stuff in the show notes for everybody. Well, again, thank you very much for joining. We really appreciate it. And we look forward to talking to you again soon.
Great conversation there, Jason. Nice job with that interview. Rajeev Kapur, thanks so much for being on the show. Again, all those links that were just mentioned, you can find those in the show notes for this episode. And if you've enjoyed this episode, please do share it with somebody who could benefit from the information that was shared. You can find links to do that and the links that we just mentioned at brobots.me. That's also where you're going to find another new episode from us next week. We'll see you at brobots.me in just a few days. Thanks for listening.
We know this podcast is amazing and it doesn't seem to lack anything, but we need a legal disclaimer. Prior to implementing anything discussed in this podcast, it is your responsibility to conduct your own research and consult your physician. You should assume that these knuckleheads don't know what they're talking about, and they're not liable for any physical or emotional issues that occur directly or indirectly from listening to this podcast.